Welcome, everyone. You're listening to the ImPerfect Podcast. I'm Kathy.
And I'm Kennedy. Join us on this week's episode as we discuss intriguing topics and people of interest that will inspire us to explore all of the unique pieces of ourselves.
We are all imperfectly perfect.
We're glad you're here. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the ImPerfect Podcast. Have you ever gone through the experience of attending an event, but you are so preoccupied by your thoughts that you end up missing the better part of the whole thing? Whether it was the argument you had in the car on the way there, the feeling that you have to take photographs of the entire event, or the worrying you entered into weeks ago. So wondering if you were going to avoid the fact that you gained a bunch of pounds, and dreading the fact that everyone that you were going to see out in public were going to be thinking about, oh, she's gained some weight or whatever. So these examples can all be metaphors for our busy lives. So whether that's living in the past, or you're distracted in the present, or worried about the future.
Yeah. Interruptions like these in our thinking can steal our positivity, detach us from enjoying real life, and often they just mess us up mentally. And despite having been physically present at the actual event, or the just basically in your life, often it can leave us feeling like we were somehow missing an action. So we present to you today mindfulness.
Mindfulness. Yeah, mindfulness is a practice that brings more awareness to the present moment. So it is not a goal-directed behavior. So there's no particular outcome that you're expecting or trying to achieve, but it's more one that puts the focus and concentration entirely just on the present moment. And it's kind of like laissez-faire, like whatever happens, happens.
Right. So although its roots come from Eastern practices, a man by the name of Jon Kabat-Zinn is credited as the father of mindfulness in the Western world. And Kabat-Zinn founded the Center for Mindfulness at the University of Massachusetts Medical School and the Oasis Institute for Mindfulness-Based Professional Education and Training, where he developed an 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction program.
That's almost like a tongue twister, that Oasis Institute. Right. So now back to a little bit more on what mindfulness actually is and how it can help. So mindfulness practices can be used to manage stress, anxiety, and even pain, probably many other things that we're not even mentioning as well. But they can help one to become more aware about their own life and be present in their own life. And it seems to boost both your mood and overall well-being.
Yeah. Can also help against this awful habit that some of us, including myself, have issues with sometimes, ruminating. So that's going over things in your head over and over and over, and trying to rejig it and trying to rethink it and trying to find a solution. And, just think, and then think again.
Yeah.
And I can totally relate to that. I think it's somewhat of a mindset that there's a solution out there, but you just haven't found it yet. So some of these practices can help people like me who, can overthink things sometimes, can help with that sort of thing too.
Yeah, it can help you to cope with both rejection and social isolation. And it has even been shown to help break unwanted habits. So by observation of the process, identifying the trigger, and allowing the replacement of the unwanted behavior with a healthier one. So just a simple concept that I keep thinking back to is as an example, because you're not alone. I know all about the overthinking. Just something simple like, did I unplug the hair straightener?
Yeah, you always bring that up.
Right. And it's because it's very real for me. Did I lock the door? Another one, did I turn the lights off in my car? So replacing this with a healthier habit so that you can, reassure yourself in situations of, ruminating and just overthinking is, I've said it before, I say these things out loud. I'm now turning the lights off in my car. I'm now unplugging the straightener. I'm now looking at the straightener and that it is in a safe space and it's not going to cause any,
Your safe little straightener.
right.
Yeah. So that can be helpful in things like that, OCD kind of type of things. Ruminating that I was thinking of is a little more of, you have a situation and you think and toss it over in your head every different direction, and let's turn it into a butterfly and let's do this with it, and just trying to find the solution. So we'll talk a little bit more about that further on in this episode and why that can tend to happen sometimes.
Yeah, and with mindfulness, studies have shown that mindfulness can have benefits that vary from physical and mental conditions. So it can help with irritable bowel syndrome, fibromyalgia, psoriasis, anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder. So it's sounding
mindfulness stuff sounds like great stuff to get into. So we're going to look at the key ingredients. So the key to mindfulness is that it helps to calm the central nervous system by using two main processes. So the first one is awareness, and the awareness would be of inner processes and experiences. And the second one would be acceptance, so without avoidance and judgments.
So it's kind of like Mom was saying, you think of a situation and you're thinking of, okay, and did they mean this by this, and or did they mean this in a mean way, and you're just in this cycle of, oh my gosh. And so to be aware that you're in that state, and then to accept it, and then to move forward with, how am I going to fix this going forward? So these processes can encourage space to allow your mind to acknowledge the present moment. So this can include physical sensations of your body and the thoughts that come into your head when you're in that headspace.
Because we can spend an awful lot of time focusing on how we are not like we'd like to be. And often this only makes us feel worse and steers us further off track, actually, as opposed to problem solving. So although it can be very important to be self-reflective, mindfulness is a way to learn how to become more aware where you're at mentally at any point, and it can help us in intercepting those unhelpful thought patterns that we have, and that negative chatter that often dominates our minds, because those kind of things rob us of the enjoyment of the present, actually. I'm sure we can all relate to situations in our lives where this sort of thing is going on and you're thinking about this or that or something else or that problem at home, and then you realize, like, whatever it was, the event, the interaction with the other person or what have you, the experience can pass, and then you're kind of like, I was there but I wasn't there.
Yeah. So this mindfulness method can also help people understand and deal with difficult situations and emotions. And it can also help them improve some of their relationships through benefiting key relationship skills. So again, being present, self-aware, regulating emotions, things like that.
So most of us are pretty bad at this now, the whole living in the moment kind of thing, because our lives are so busy and things are often, there's too much on the plate. So things are often discussed, and interpersonal relationships are happening while you're doing something else, reading the paper, looking at your phone, driving, or doing 100 other things. And I think we can all relate to the fact of damn phones, I do it, you've got one, you do it. And it takes some real dedication and consistency to not end up on your phone all the time, talking to somebody and you're, oh, just like, I just gonna, and I've done it too, I know. And
even
so I have to answer this, or I have to do this, or I have to, meanwhile, maybe you only had an hour with this person. And if you're not careful, the two of you can both end up, with 15 minutes, basically.
Right. And a whole other can of worms on that is just being mindful enough to go, why am I reaching for my phone when I'm supposed to be hanging out with this person? Is it because I'm
That's
uncomfortable? What's that?
that's a whole other show.
That's what I mean. Like, that's a whole other layer of the mindfulness and being, again, aware and setting the intention of not picking up the phone to interact with the person. That's just a whole other layer. Why are you reaching for the phone so quickly? Why is that happening? Yeah, just a whole other thought I had when you were talking about it. So when we are being present in this current moment, our attention is only focused on one thing. And the chances are we are not stressing about the past or the future. And I also wanted to bring up the point. I mean, I know my mom can relate to this one, and I actually did it this morning. You're laying in bed and you can't even focus on the one simple task in life, which is called sleeping. Instead, you're laying there and you're thinking of the 20 other things that you should have done yesterday and the 30 other things you're going to do today. So it's funny how we're here laying in bed, but our mind is in all of these other places. So now we can't even focus on sleeping properly.
And some people struggle with that at night and getting to
Yeah.
bed and worrying and ruminating about this, that, or the other thing. And
Mm-hmm.
me, it's more of a morning thing. And definitely in the past few years, it's really amped up. And I don't know if that's just I'm sure there's some kind of a correlation age-wise, hormone-wise, and that sort of thing. But yeah, so they also say about mindfulness that if you're observing the situation almost from a distance, like we're supposed to be doing in these cases, and describing the facts without adding our own opinions or judgment, it can help reduce the difficult emotions, and it can actually help us cope better. And this could take some practice depending on how one operates. And some people tend to deal more with facts, and others tend to assume or add additional emotional context. I know Kennedy and I both could speak on that
Yeah.
one. I'm very much a feeler type person, a thinker and a problem solver. Like I had said earlier, I think I turn it around, and is there an option this way? And hey, maybe we need to turn it upside down. And, I was the kid growing up on Sesame Street. They always had like a number at well, I didn't grow up on Sesame Street, but growing up watching Sesame Street.
That explains a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, me and Ernie go way back. But at the first of each episode, there was a number, and I assume it was just Buddy who worked in the film department, to keep track of something. But I always thought that that number must have been attached to some secret, like they were going to give out a prize later or something like that. And even like shows like Price is Right, same thing, but they didn't have a stock number at the first, or an episode number, that sort of thing. But I always thought that when they brought, Barker's Beauties out and they were describing the merchandise, that if I just listen, I must have had some really good young or teachers when I was young to, establish, like, just be quiet and listen,
Read between the lines. Yeah.
well, and I was sure that they were going to give us some secret information so that I would know, I would be the one that would know the answer on how to play the game or how to win. And yeah, so I think maybe that's where some of my overthinking stemmed from. As a personality or a coping strategy, people can use this, but can actually be a trauma response too, that keeps the mind busy and distracts you from other dysfunction and pain. And now in hindsight, and looking at my own blind spot kind of situation here, I think that that could be at play as well in my life at certain times. So
Mm.
that's a subject for another day.
Yeah. Another big subject. Yeah.
Right.
But the simple observation of mindfulness is that it quiets the mind, allowing calm perspective, and it can also unlock new insights. So it's almost like a bird's eye view of the whole situation.
Mhm.
Mm.
So, according to the mindfulness model, our only reaction during most times should be kind of like a, that's interesting. You
Which is
know,
not how
observing.
I live life. It's not, that's interesting. I go, why did they do that?
I mean, if there's imminent danger or things like that, of course we have to respond. But,
Right.
I think everyone gets the gist here. The simple day-to-day things, if we can practice unattached observation, I they claim it to be a big part of mindfulness. And, let me think of an example of what that kind of thing would look like. A circumstance where perhaps, you know, you and a friend had a disagreement,
Mm.
and instead of diving in with all your it's easier said than done for sure. Instead of diving in with all your triggers and emotional responses and the 12 things that they said over the last 12 years that really got under your skin, just, if you can have the the ability to sort of step back for a minute and look at the situation and wonder, like, that's interesting, I wonder why they said
Yeah.
that. And
Like each situation is specific to its own situation. It's not like this like let me pull out the file folder. Remember the time you called me bitch? Yeah, well, this relates to right now,
yeah,
you know.
I mean, instead of dragging all that garbage with you that
Mm.
sometimes people can do, to sort of step back and look at the situation as a whole, and not to antagonize the other person that perhaps you're in the situation with. But yeah, I can't seem to find the words to say what I'm trying to convey here.
You're making sense though.
Yeah,
It makes sense. You're saying that you should be focused on the here and the now, and kind of going that's interesting in their current situation and the conversation you're having right now, or the way they've reacted in this situation. Because the funny thing is too, is I would say like 90% of what we perceive is not at all what's happening.
that's what,
Maybe,
yeah, you and I talked about that earlier, that
yeah,
stuff, not sometimes, most of the time, things are happening. And just as you've got many balls in the air for your life, every other person has the same thing going on. So if, there is an argument or whatever, maybe that stemmed from an actual issue between the two of you, or maybe it also could have had something to do with, something that happened in the other person's life and had very little to do with you, but you're just kind of the sounding board or catching it.
I just think of situations where mom will text me back, "Okay," and I'll be going, "Okay, she's mad. Great. Like, what's going on now?" And meanwhile, mom's just in a hurry trying to get out the door because she has an appointment at a certain amount or at a certain time, and she has to pick up my sister and whatever. And I'm going, "Okay." She said, "Okay." She couldn't even say, "Okay." Like, okay, so something's going on between her and I when really there's absolutely nothing. She's just in a hurry. So.
Yeah, for
Mm.
sure.
I'm still thinking of all the interesting times in my life where I would, if I reacted like, that's interesting, how it would just not be relevant. I've just thought immediately while we were just talking, oh yeah, Kennedy's playing a video game and, I lose and I go, that's interesting.
No.
That's not relevant, but I'm just thinking of every situation in my life. That's interesting. Something goes wrong with work. That's interesting.
No, it's kind of like, yeah, don't feel the need to interject in things that just, and let them play out. A lot of times we can actually make things more complicated by
Yeah.
putting in there.
hmm Yeah. So additionally, to get back on track a little bit here, the practice of mindfulness strengthens an area of the brain known as the prefrontal cortex, which helps calm things down in your brain, and it gives a break to the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that is associated with fear and anger. So essentially, mindfulness can kind of serve as like a mini vacation in a sense for your brain.
I'll get my tiki hut ready.
Yeah.
So many people believe that meditation and mindfulness are the same thing,
Mm.
or that mindfulness is something that you do during meditation, but it's actually neither. It's actually neither of those.
Mm,
Although meditation is one of the techniques that's used in practicing mindfulness, mindfulness can be done as a part of a meditation, and meditation as a part of mindfulness, or by itself without meditation.
mm. Also, you can start small and practice informally with mindfulness by simply being present in the moment during everyday activities. So, like the example Mom was giving with putting the phone down. So, you don't have to overcomplicate it. You can start with paying attention even to your breathing, your walking, how you're talking. Yeah, situations like that.
Just, yeah, taking each moment for what it is, I think. Like, sounds pretty old school and Little House on the Prairie, but
Who would have
yeah,
thought
I
that would
think,
have sounded old timey to say that you should be in the present moment?
yeah, exactly, right. I
Mm,
can remember my dad saying when I was a child, we went to some store or something, and there was the thing where you put the air in your tires for the pressure,
mm.
and it was free, but then all of a sudden, suddenly it was a quarter. My father just thought that was awful, and it was, I mean, it is, but it isn't, and he said, never see the day and pay for air. He says, pretty before you know it, we're going to have to pay for water too.
Mm, water bottles.
And then, shortly thereafter, the big jugs in every office building and that
Yeah,
sort of thing. Yeah.
interesting, eh? So the goal of any mindfulness technique is to achieve a state of being alert, focused, and relaxed. So using an unfocused perspective by deliberately paying attention to thoughts and sensations without judgment is kind of where you want to go with that.
Yeah. Mindfulness switches us from the doing mindset to the being mindset.
Mm,
And there's also a variety of techniques available to adapt and personalize your experience of mindfulness. And we're going to go over a few of them here, the more common ones to help you get a start on refocusing on the present moment if that's something you choose to do.
And the really cool thing about most of these suggestions is that the majority of them can be done without anyone else around, so they don't have to know what you're up to. So that's kind of nice.
Hmm. So you might not want to put your headphones on and tune out in meditation while you're at work, depending on what you do. But most of them can actually be easily adapted to work in almost any situation and can be really helpful for, uh, events or things or situations where there is a high stress level. And, it's kind of cool to have something in your bag of tricks that you can just be sitting there and practicing silently to yourself, that everybody's not going to be like, pointing and laughing or anything.
Right. Um,
Leotard.
right. So first and super important, instead of trying to multitask and do two or more things at the same time, mindfulness encourages practicing single tasking. So only ever focusing on one thing at a time. Um, that is quite honestly hard for me. I feel like, and even so, like, even if it's you're not accomplishing necessarily anything, as an example, my boyfriend, he can't do the dishes without music on. So to be there in your own thoughts would just even be, like, turn the music off. And that's hard for some people. And it could be several different reasons, but it doesn't need to necessarily be that you're accomplishing multiple things at one time. It could just be that you can't do one thing at one time.
Right. And to circle back around to my whole story about my dad and buying water and all that sort of thing, I think I started there on a loop with, it's about making things simpler like they were in the olden days. They didn't have, like, yeah, you still had to watch the kids while you were outside hanging the laundry, but life was so much simpler and you could focus on the this or the that, or you weren't didn't have the phone under your neck while you were trying to find a recipe on your tablet, and
Mm,
and then doing all the other things, and 1,000 things going on, answering an email from your at-home job and all this sort of thing. So we understand that some parts of our lives do require multitasking, but really most don't. And
Mm.
it's kind of more something we've done to ourselves. It's become a cultural norm to try to juggle 10 things at once, and we're actually encouraged and commended for it. And we didn't actually find data to support this, but we're going to go out on a limb here and say that we feel there's a pretty good chance that anxiety and mental health have both risen to all-time highs because of our chronic, overscheduled, overstimulated, and multitasking lives.
Mm. Yeah, I relate to that big time. It's just even so lately, I don't know why so much lately, but my schedule is jam-packed full of things, and it can easily happen. And mom was even just saying to me the other day, like, I love to see my friends, I love to be with people. But mom just made the small, simple suggestion to me the other day, why don't you just start with, you're going to make a commitment to yourself that you're going to only see X amount of friends per week. So then that way you have time for yourself and to do the other things that are important in your life too, because you need to kind of set those boundaries. So it's like mom was saying, it's commended in this society to be a busy and overscheduled person who can handle it all. And wow, look at them. They're such a powerful person. They get so much done. But meanwhile, this person could be just so exhausted they don't know what to do with themselves either. So
Because you do need some downtime and some time for yourself, that sort of
mm,
thing. And, time for your family and your friends. It's a balance. So they've given us some mindfulness tips on the different resources that we looked at, and we've got a short list here for you. First one is meditation. Sit quietly and focus on your natural breathing or on a word. They even suggest, something like relax or peace. It doesn't always have to be or that
right.
sort of thing, and that can feel kind of weird, for the first time. I do some meditation type things and mind type things, but never in my life have I said Om, so it's not a requirement. And you can allow your thoughts to come and go. And the key here is without judgment.
Mm,
So, you think of the dog that you saw in the commercial yesterday, you think about the apple pie that you want to eat, you think about, and you're not supposed to go into that whole, why am I thinking about that commercial? And that was yesterday, and there's much more important, and there's that pie again, and I know I'm going to eat a piece, and then all of a sudden you're down the wrong road. So it's just kind of like let them come in, let them go out, and don't judge them, and focus on your breath. So there's all kinds of stuff on YouTube. You can find something that works for you. I'm sure of it. There's guided and unguided, and woman's voice and man's voice, and the 5 minute one, and the 2.5 minute one, and the 1 hour one. And you
mm,
can put sitting and laying and
yeah.
if you want to meditate and check that out and see if it's a practice that you want to get into and to help calm your mind. I'm sure you can find something on YouTube that will work for you.
Yeah. So the next one is body sensations. So just to be able to sit there and notice subtle body sensations that start like an itch or a tingle in your left ear or, and just let those sensations happen and let them pass, but just to be mindful of them and notice that each part of your body is in succession from head to toe.
How about sensory awareness? So some people are more kinesthetic than others, and they give more weight to sights and smells and sounds and tastes and touches. They make a suggestion that you can go through them and almost label them. So if you smell the cookies, then you say to yourself, that's a smell. And it sounds pretty elementary, but I think that's part of the point here is bringing it back down to elementary and to normal and plainness. We've just seemed to complicate everything. So let's
Well, it's
uncomplicate it.
another good point too, is that we're on sensory overload all the time. So to undercomplicate it again, like you were saying, and just pay attention to the small stuff. It's big. Another one is emotion observation. So just again, allowing emotions to be present without judging them and just sitting there. And if to bring in the dog from the commercial yesterday, if you feel sad about that, let yourself be sad about that.
Mm-hmm. And regulation, also known as urge surfing. So let's say you feel a craving to urge a craving or an urge to do something like eat excess food, use an addictive substance, practice an unwanted behavior. They're telling us that if we acknowledge the urge and just kind of, again, don't engage with it, just kind of watch it float by, that it will pass.
Mm.
And notice how your body feels as the craving enters, and then replace the wish for craving to go away with a certain knowledge that it will subside on its own.
Mm-hmm. So conscious sensory engagement. So it's just another way of like we were describing earlier. So find a sight, a smell, a scent, and just focus on that, and maybe have deep thought about that specific smell or what you're looking at. Or I've even found myself, again, this is going to sound like I'm a crazy person, but just to stare into like the abyss and to notice all of the little dots that your eyes, it's just, anyway, just a thought. But to sit there and just be mindful of that, like that is being mindful alone.
Right, right. And with the one that you just handled there with the site, you find a site, find a scent. I had seen that quite a few times actually as a treatment, as a quick self-treatment for if you're having, an anxiety attack or that sort of thing, that it actually helps bring you back down to the present moment. So something we can look at is thankfulness. Again, it comes up. Carry this activity through the day and look for things to be thankful for. And most of us are pretty fortunate, and there's always something we can name.
Body scan. So check in with your body and how it's feeling. Are you sore? Are you tired, energetic, fatigued, all these different feelings, and observe the stimuli that may be affecting your reactions, or consciously relaxing muscle groups one at a time. Mom talked one time about how she never realized how she always keeps her body at a tense state until she relaxes it. So to consciously relax your right leg and your foot, and to just let it just go limp. And it sounds stupid, but it's not, because you don't realize how tense and how hyperfixated and how there's all these extra piece. I'm trying to find the word. We're just overstimulated all the time, so we don't notice half of what we're doing just out of instinct.
Yeah. What about breath work? So again, there's lots of exercises out there. I use a few myself, things like you can imagine a tree, and on each of the leaves, you can write your grievance of the day, whatever it is, or I'm angry at so and so, or I'm super sad about my cat that died when I was 14, or whatever it is. And you write the thoughts on the leaves, and you let the leaves just fall off the tree and float away, and you watch them as they float away. Box breathing is another one. There's a bunch of different ways to do this particular one. What I like is you imagine a box, and you imagine painting. Okay, we're going to paint it red. So you paint the front red. Maybe you want to paint the back blue back here, and the sides are green. And it retrains your brain to leave all those other things out there and just kind of
Focus on the one task.
bring it back to center. And one I actually use quite a bit is breath regulation. So You inhale to the count of 10 and you hold it to the count of 10, and you exhale to the count of 10 and you hold it to the count of 10. And then you just repeat. And that'll bring you around in a hurry back to a calm state.
So just as a last one, simply focusing on positive affirmations and mantras for the day. So if you have an easy go-to statement like I am worthy, everyone was placed in my life for a reason, I choose to be calm and positive, certain positive affirmations like that can just help, again, bring you back around.
I know personally, when my youngest daughter, when I was pregnant for her, that was a scary time. There were a lot of really bad diagnoses, and I had to find something to bring myself back to the present moment and distract all those negative images and bad thoughts and bad diagnosis. So I use thankfulness and faith and mental redirection all wrapped into one. And I developed this mantra for myself. And it was just simply, thank you for healing my baby. Thank you for healing my baby. So when the scary thoughts would come, that's just, okay, we're turning those scary thoughts off and we're putting this, thank you for healing my baby. And I said that a million times, I'm sure of it.
That's a good example. So our information for today's episode was gathered from a variety of resources. So that would be like harvardhealth.edu, mindful.org, and psychologytoday.com. So until next time, we encourage you to become or try to become more mindful in your life. Try to stop multitasking where you are able to. Work on observing without judgment. Take a breath. Be thankful as you move throughout your life and start the journey of bringing more of your awareness into the present moment.
After all, we are human beings and not human doings. So let's focus on being. Yeah. Thanks for listening. See you next week.
Thanks, guys.
If you or someone you know has a unique story to tell, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at theimperfectpodcast@outlook.com.
For more information and how to connect with us on social media, you can visit us at our website, theimperfectpodcast.ca.
And from whichever platform you are listening to this episode, be sure to like, share, and leave us a review. We would really appreciate your feedback. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode.
We look forward to hearing your feedback and seeing you all find that extra joy and embrace your own imperfect.
See you next week.